Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to the BU podcast. I'm your host, Ariel Von Bretter. My mission is to empower people to become the best versions of themselves so that they can live their best lives. I'm redefining success so people stop living the lives they think they should live and start living the lives they love. Join me weekly as I share my own insights and speak with guests that have embraced their unique gifts into living life on their terms. I hope these conversations inspire you to make the most out of your life by being your best self. Remember, be you, be beautiful. Hey, you guys, I'm so excited to share this interview with you all. I had the honor of speaking with Tressa Azarel Smallwood. She is a former teacher turned best-selling author, publisher, and filmmaker. She's currently partnering with BET and BET Her to share the stories of African American women. Through her work, she is bringing awareness to topics such as mental health, domestic violence, and breast cancer. I'm just so amazed by all that she is doing. Tressa is proof that you really can go after anything that you want. Please go check out her work, and I hope that you're inspired by this conversation. Enjoy. Before we get into the show, I wanted to take a moment to share how I host my podcast using Anchor. It's free and easy to use. You can record and edit using your phone or computer, and then Anchor distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. It's super easy to use, and they do the work for you. I highly recommend using Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now, on to the show. Tressa, thank you so much for joining me on the BU podcast today. Will you just please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So I am Tressa Azarel Smallwood. I am a wife, a mom, a serial entrepreneur, and a filmmaker. Thank you so much for having me, Ariel.
Your background is actually in teaching, right? Will you just go ahead, and I want to go back to kind of the beginning to see how you got from teaching to where you are now.
I know. So it's such an untraditional story about how, I started out as a school teacher and now ended up in the film industry. People ask all the time, like, what was that transition like? How did it happen? And it was one of those things where I know it was truly a divine intervention from God, because it was not planned. I have no background in film at all. But in 2001, I was actually teaching grade at the time. And I ended up being pregnant with my daughter, Bailey, who's now 19.
Yeah.
And so I went to the doctor for, a regular visit. And the doctor told me that I was 3 months pregnant and that, I was in jeopardy of losing my baby if I didn't go on bed rest.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, all of that was, that was a huge shock. And so ended up going on bed rest for 6 months. And during that time, while on bed rest, I decided to write a book, not because that was my background or something that I really, had always desired to do, but it was either do something flip the remote. So I chose to do something productive. I wrote a book, and that one book turned into a huge bestseller, and was the start to my book publishing company. So I never went back to work.
Wow.
And that was the beginning. So, the transition was not necessarily from teaching straight into movies. It was teaching into, from going from a school teacher to an author, and then eventually, started my own book publishing company, started publishing other authors, which gave me all of the content. And then that's when the movies hit.
Wow. So with writing your first book, I mean, did you ever have any sort of vision that you wanted to write a book or ever publish a book, or like, where did this come from?
I know. I'm telling you, I did not. I have to ask myself that question all the time. It was never, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but definitely never had the vision that I wanted to be an author. That seed was actually planted by a family member who literally came to visit me while I was on bed rest. And she said, you should write a book. You're good at writing. And I was like, write a book. Like, that's a lot. That's time consuming. What would I write about? And so she was working at a penitentiary at the time, and she was telling me all of these crazy stories. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, that stuff is unbelievable. And
Yeah.
so I wrote this book called A Life to Remember, which is literally, it's fiction, but it's loosely based off of a lot of the stories that she was telling me about her experiences working there.
Yeah.
So that was my very first book. I published the book in 2002, even though I wrote it in 2001.
Yeah.
Because obviously when you publish books, it takes time for the marketing and, you have to give it your all when when you're literally publishing and marketing a book. And
Right.
so it took a lot of time. So when I put it out in 2002, it became a bestseller instantly. I sold 5,000 copies within the first 2 months and
Wow.
made 40 grand. That was a wake up call for me because I said, okay, as a school teacher with a master's degree, I was making $43,000 back then.
Right. Yeah. It's like, wow,
Forty-three
you got your
thousand
whole
dollars a year.
salary in a couple
Right.
weeks.
Yeah, in 2 months. I was like, okay, this was pretty cool, and I liked it, and I'm good at it. So I was like, let me duplicate that and see how it goes. So yeah, I ended up writing, other books, published more authors, and it became, my new business, my company.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so I'm kind of curious of like when you went through the publishing process the first time, like, what were kind of like your expectations when you released your book out into the world?
So I had unrealistic expectations. I was listening to society and, reading articles like J.K. Rowling getting these big deals and, selling 2 million copies on the first day. So I think my head was in the zone of, oh, yes, I'm going to do this. And I soon found out, that does not happen to everyone. It is a lot of
Right.
hard work, a lot of marketing, and you have to have the right fan base for that. So I
Yeah.
was happy with the success of the book, but it was totally, not what I expected. I expected more, but that's just because I was listening to other people and believing the hype.
Right. But in a way, I mean, you still had a very successful start. So I think kind of having that
Oh, for
mindset that
sure.
you were going to be big was very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did you have any like fears or doubts when you went through this process?
Yeah, I mean, anytime that you're spending a lot of money and going into uncharted territories, it is slightly fearful. But, that little bit of fear pushes you. If there's no fear at all, that means the dream isn't big enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then, so how did you go from publishing this book to getting into the film industry?
Well, what was happening is in around 2014, I had gotten to the point where I believe at that point in my life, I had roughly 140 books under my company that I own the rights to those books.
Oh, wow.
7 of those books I personally have written.
Yeah.
The others are written by authors under my label. And so I was being approached by, production companies and networks saying, hey, do you have any book projects that we can look at? We're interested in doing books to film. We'd like to buy the rights to some of your projects. And so obviously I know from a business perspective that, maintaining ownership is really the key.
Right.
So I didn't really want to sell my rights for other people to produce the movie. So it was really more of a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I said, well, I've never made a movie before, so let me go and hire people who actually have made movies successfully. So that's what I did. I ended up hiring 4 to 5 people. Actually, they were all out of Philadelphia. Jamal Hill had already made Brotherly Love and Deuces with Queen Latifah's movie company.
Yeah,
so I
wow.
said, yes, I brought him on board, and he came to Maryland and stayed with me for 6 weeks, and we made the very first movie, Secret.
That's awesome.
So that movie was successful not because of me. It was because I knew how to hire people who knew what they were doing.
Right. And I mean, in hiring these people, like, did you have any connections or how did you kind of break into this?
Yeah. So just calling around saying, hey, such and such, I want to set up a meeting with them, And, nowadays it's so easy to get in touch with people. There's social media, there's IMDb Pro. You can
Hmm.
contact almost anybody. The question is, are they going to talk to you or not? But you
Right.
know, and I was very clear. Hey, I just really want to set up a meeting. I'm the owner of 162 books. I'm looking to turn some of these books into movies. I mean, anybody in the film industry, as a director, would say, "Oh, well, that's a meeting that I need to take."
Right. Yeah. So you were very smart in how you kind of like positioned yourself with, owning
Yeah.
these other books and then, knowing that like, oh, if I still own the rights to the books and do the movie myself, like that, it's going to turn into something.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was really good.
And then was there anything that was like, that really like surprised you throughout this process?
Yeah, how much hard work it was. I think all of us, when we watch TV, we see the end result, right? You watch Entertainment Tonight. What do you see? People walking on the red carpet. You watch
Hmm.
the Oscars. It looks fabulous.
Yeah.
But when you are behind the scenes making the movie, it's far from fabulous. And
Right.
that was the realization for me that this is a lot of work.
Hmm.
I've been traded, but it is a lot of work, and that's one of the things that I did not expect going in the beginning because of my false perception.
Yeah. And I mean, so what made you keep going? Because a lot of times it's so easy for people to like, oh, this is harder than I thought. I'm just going to give up. Like, what made you keep going?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, being the owner of a book publishing company, that had its own sets of challenges. So I'm
Hmm.
used to the hard work. So that wasn't going to deter me just because I got in and realized that it was a lot different than what I expected because I'm used to the hard work. So
Right.
work ethic plays a big part in this. You can't be willing to you just have to understand that when I go in and do this, no matter what happens, I got to see it through to the end, and it's really a mindset thing.
Hmm. And do you have kind of like a mission or why or like purpose that kind of drives you?
Yeah, I really want to be able to tell African American stories
Hmm.
from an African American female perspective. I think
Yeah.
that's important because the reality is most of the shows that are made, movie shows, etc., are made by bigwigs in Hollywood, and they
Right.
can't necessarily tell everybody's story.
Right. And I know that you have some short films that are coming up with BET that are discussing African American stories and struggles like breast cancer and mental health and domestic
Yeah.
violence. I'm really excited about that series. Will you just tell us a little bit more about that and what that entails?
Yeah, this is really huge. I think that it's going to benefit a lot of people who are not accustomed to verbally talking about some of these issues. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we've done is we've tapped into a lot of celebrity directors. So,
Yeah.
for example, for the Couch, which is the mental health initiative, Vivica Fox,
Mm-hmm.
who is well known.
Yeah.
There's Mona Scott Young, who has definitely the attraction to the youth.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about now highlighting mental health, they can tap into those audiences and they will most likely listen because it's coming from them. And so they've
Right.
done like a lot of PSAs to talk about why it's important to get help. Um, you know, they're basically making it cool to seek um, some mental health help. Whereas
Yeah.
before, people would not talk about it, and it's okay to talk about it. And so that's the goal, to get people comfortable with talking about what's going on and knowing that it's okay to not be okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm big on mental health and mental health awareness. And I mean, I know that like especially in the African American community, it's not a topic that is typically talked about. So seeing,
Hmm.
other people, especially celebrities and well-known people talk about it and that it's okay is just I think it's just so impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for you to see these. The mental health projects actually air in July on
Hmm.
BET Her, and
Yeah.
then the breast cancer project actually air in October, and domestic violence airs in October as well.
Okay. Awesome. And how did you kind of get connected with this project?
One of the executive producers has licensed some of my films before. Her name is Larissa Bates.
Hmm.
She's one of the executive producers of all of the women's health initiatives because she had already seen my work, and
Yeah.
she was accustomed to my project. She just tapped me to produce it for them.
That's awesome. I mean, and what impact do you really want these stories to leave with people?
I think I want to focus more on the preventative side.
Hmm.
So for example, in our breast cancer short, a lot of the film will highlight, what you can do to avoid getting to the point where you're too late, where you're stage 3, stage 4. We
Yeah.
want to get people in and get in the early stages, and on the mental health side, when you know that there's a problem or you even think that there's a problem, seek help,
Hmm.
and right then, don't become too drastic. And so I think that's the part that we want to really highlight.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, seeking help earlier is always better, and especially, with preventing things so that they don't get worse and you're not, at stage 4 finding it and stuff. Um, I'm kind of curious, and it's okay if you don't want to share, but I'm just curious about like what if you have any personal experience with any of these topics.
I do. I do all of them actually. I
Yeah.
had family members who, yeah, I had family members who battled breast cancer.
Hmm.
Um, Couple family members right now in remission. I've lost family members, so I mean, definitely, it's a topic that hits close to home.
Yeah.
I'm big on pushing mammograms. Doing some campaigns. Last year, we partnered with Washington Radiology in the Washington D.C. area so
Oh,
that we
awesome.
could get mammograms for people who were, one, they never wanted to get mammograms in the first place, but then two, because of COVID, we're like, hey, just because you're home doesn't mean that breast cancer still doesn't exist. Um,
Right.
so, definitely always involved with that on every level. This is our first year with the hotline where we are focusing on the domestic violence. So
Hmm.
Carrie Hilson,
Hmm.
Raheem Devine, they all star in her Lifeline, which highlights how a lot of times domestic violence is going on. And with
Yeah.
social media, it brings now another element of it. And that's what that short is about.
Right.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for sharing, that it is close to home for you, and that and what else you're doing to kind of bring awareness to these topics. I think that's great. What other
Yeah.
projects are you working on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, we are in pre-production on two other major projects right now.
Hmm.
We're about to film Trophy Wife in July.
Okay.
Um, and so, look, that is the reason for my lack of internet today to talk to you in a stable place. Uh, so we're excited about that project. And then we're in pre-production on Greenwood Avenue, which is our scripted program about the Tulsa race riots of 1921. But we're
Yeah.
telling this story in a contemporary manner, which with in hopes of more of the youth. So we're
Right.
really excited.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got lots of timely projects coming up that are just really important to
Yeah,
shed some more light on.
that's right.
That's awesome.
That's right. So we are busy but productive and loving the work that we're doing.
Good. And you said earlier that kind of like what keeps you going is like you're just have a good work ethic and you're a hard worker. I'm kind of curious if you have any tips to help people that, I mean, because we're always like, oh, I'm too busy to do something. And I mean, you're doing a lot. So how do you really manage it all?
A habit of doing is we say that we're too busy to get things done, but we make time for what we value, right? So if you really, really want to do something, then you have to put in the time and you have to sacrifice. And I think that's something that I do well. I just have to put things into perspective. Everything won't make the cut, but the stuff that I really want to get done, I put time into it. I make it a priority, and that's the only way that it's going to be successful.
Yeah. And I really love how you said like everything won't make the cut. I think that's just so simple, but it's very powerful.
Yeah, it won't. It won't.
Yeah.
I used to try to make it happen, and then I realized, oh no, it's not happening. No, I'm not.
Yeah. And so, how has being yourself impacted your success?
Oh, well, which area, Ariel? That's a tough question.
In whatever area you would like, just, I'm all about people being their most authentic selves. And I'm just curious if being yourself has kind of played any impact in where you are today, or if you've ever had any like struggles, like finding your authentic voice or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the part that is for me right now, the impact is probably deciding what really matters, right? And so, if you can have influence over creatives, like right now, there are a lot of creatives who want to do what I'm doing. And I put a lot of time and focus on making sure that I give true testimonies of what this is really like. Because for too long, people have sugarcoated this industry and made it to be something that it's not. So people really know the truth. I think that's key, and I definitely think that I have impact when it comes to, how to become a filmmaker. Right? The average person would say, no, a school teacher cannot become a filmmaker. An author cannot become a filmmaker, and I basically dispelled all of that by just doing it.
Right. Yeah. Did you have people along the way, like telling you like what you were doing was crazy and like that you weren't able to do it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. It took forever to make some of them a believer. I had friends who said, are you going to leave your good job where you have summers off? You have a master's in education. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And I'm like, well, listen, I just would rather put the work in now and have the rest of my life off instead of just summers.
Yeah. I mean, and how did you know, like your first book, it did so successful within those first 2 months? Like, how did you know that like wasn't just a fluke and that you could, reproduce it and keep having success?
I think because there was more of a blueprint at that time, on the business side. It was like, okay, if you sell 5,000 books of anything, this is your profit. So if you can sell 5,000 by putting up, this amount of money in marketing dollars, then you certainly can sell 20,000 if you double that,
Right.
I think it just was a business structure and analysis of looking at what was happening.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a smart way to look at it, of like, it's just kind of like a formula. If you do this, this will happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm very pleased. Very pleased.
Awesome. And what message do you want to leave with people today?
Yes, I think that I would close with just telling people whatever it is that you want to do, just be passionate about it. I love that your podcast is called Be You, because that's key. People always want to do what other people are doing, but you got to look at what works for you. Find your passion, because if you're going to do anything that is, going to leave any type of mark in the earth, then you need to do it well. It's going to take a lot of work, hard work. It's going to be challenges. It will not always be easy. So you need to love it, be passionate about it, and just stay the course. Just stay the course, because there will be hard times, but the best is yet to come.
I love that. And what kind of makes it all worth it for you?
Oh, my goodness. I'm probably seeing the final product on screen.
Yeah. That's got to be a crazy feeling.
Yeah, because sometimes starting from pre-pro all the way till when it comes on, it could be a year and a half, sometimes 2 years. So that's the final point. When you see it, you're like, okay, that was worth it.
Right. Like it all comes together, and I'm sure like seeing people enjoy it and what they get out of it, it's got to be really special.
Yeah.
Awesome. Absolutely. And have you ever acted in any of your movies or films?
Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Is that in the cards for you?
No, I wouldn't even consider. No.
Really?
Nah. You got to remember, I said, do what you're passionate about and do what you're good at.
That's true.
I'm not good at acting at all. So I don't even want to try to get in front of the camera.
It's like stay in your lane.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get it. But that's really good of, being aware of what you actually want to do. And because I'm sure other people have probably asked you to do it and you're like, no, I don't know what I'm good at.
That's right.
And where can people find you and connect with you?
I'll spell it. TressaAzarel.com, TressaAzarel.com. And then on my social media, I'm active probably mostly on my Instagram, which is CEO Azarel. So that's C as in cat, E as in egg, O as in Oscar, and then Azarel, Azarel.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely put those links in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you, and just, stay tuned for all of the stuff that you have coming out. It's very exciting. So I can't wait to see all of it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening to the BU podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends and write me a review. I would love to hear from you. And you can find me on Instagram at BeautifulChick or on my website, beautifulchick.com. Remember, be you, be beautiful.